inflation as well. There's been a big raise in food prices. Do you see that as well?
There's a huge problem with inflation. Food costs are up between 25 and 30%. I tell people all the time that the most expensive vehicle to operate in America is a grocery cart because food costs have been just going through the roof. And people that struggled with food insecurity before, with inflation, it's making food purchases through legitimate supermarket channels almost impossible to get all the staples that they need.
What are those workers telling you about the recent layoffs announcements? How are they um, living with this announcement, and how, why is the auto industry now still struggling? They say that they're not selling enough cars, they're going electrical, there's a big transition. How do you see that?
Well, the industry is trying to pivot to electric vehicles, and I think that's a failed strategy because we don't have the infrastructure to support that. And so now they've come to the realization that they've scaled back their plans for electrification. Not only have they scaled back, they've recommitted to traditional fuel-based vehicles. So they're trying to find their footing. Plus, because of the increased cost in vehicles, it's made purchasing new vehicles almost impossible for middle class or average American citizens. Sure, the upper class can still afford vehicles, but the average American, having a new vehicle is beyond their reach.
Those workers, just to understand, because people in France don't really get it, but here in Michigan is a big, how do you say, key state
Yes.
for the next presidential election. Why would you say that that's the case? Why is it a key state?
Well, traditionally, Michigan is the home of the big three. It's the home of Chrysler, it's the home, which is Stellantis, it's the home of Ford and General Motors. So all of the big auto companies are headquartered here. So because of that, Michigan is a union town, and unions traditionally are Democratic. But a lot of their Democratic base is beginning to erode because they're realizing that in a lot of different areas, with inflation, with the cost of goods, with the ability to just manage budgets, it's becoming harder and harder. So there's more food insecurity, there's more housing insecurity or housing stability. In addition to that, people's utilities, water, electricity, natural gas to heat their house and light their houses is becoming more expensive. So they turn to social agencies like us and many other social agencies for assistance because the budget that they have just doesn't support the lifestyle that they used to be able to support with the good paying jobs that the auto industry and other unionized places provided.
So how do they feel about this next election? Are a lot of them are not going to vote, or are they just disabused? Are they just going to vote totally different, meaning Trump, or do you have an idea?
Well, I mean, the Democratic Party's trying to repackage themselves into something they're not. That Democrats are in control both in the state of Michigan and on a national basis with the White House. And so people are, after 4 years of Democratic control and all the difficulties with inflation, supply chain issues, the recovery from the pandemic, all these issues have created huge hardships. And so a lot of people are rethinking their political allegiance and think that we had lower fuel costs for our vehicles under President Trump, the previous president. We had lower inflation under President Trump. So people are wondering if the unions kind of led them down the wrong path, telling them to be Democratic instead of Republican, and a lot of them are abandoning the way the unions want them to vote is Democratic. So a lot of people are rethinking what their political allegiance should be and are abandoning their traditional allegiance of the Democratic Party, the union type people.
So this weekend is Labor Day weekend. Tomorrow there's going to be a parade in Detroit with unions and everything. Does it still have are they still? I mean, are they still engaged in those unions and engaged in their work, or are they just just trying to make ends meet and
Well, a lot of people are still engaged with their unions, but I think their political affiliations are shifting. And so many people will come out for Labor Day. Union membership is still strong, although it's just a small amount of the total population. But they have a strong voice in politics. The unions are very strong in terms of democratic politics. And so that strength will probably still hold. I mean, they believe in the union way, which has been a good thing for a lot of people. It's lifted their standard of living. But now with the uncertainty and the downshift in the auto industry, the plant right here in Warren, Michigan, that's only about a mile from our church, they're in the process of laying off 2,400 workers at the Dodge truck assembly plant right here on Mound Road. So we're at Van Dyke. The next main road is Mound. It's going to create a lot of hardship and ripple effects through the community, because those people, even though they'll have unemployment compensation for a period of time, but they're going to create problems with food insecurity, and they're going to be looking for food as well. And it'll have ripple effects through the supply chain and the supplier base that supplies parts to those same auto plants that are scaling back.
do we know why they're scaling back? Do we have an idea?
They're scaling back at the Dodge plant right over here in Warren, Michigan. General Motors just announced that they're laying off 1,000 salaried workers right here at the tech center in Warren, Michigan. And those are high-paying, significant jobs. And at least 600 of those jobs are going to be directly affected right here at the tech center in Warren, Michigan. Those people won't have the benefits and the costs that and the pay that go along with those jobs. So it's going to put hardship on everybody. Even if they were able to afford an expensive vehicle working for General Motors, they might not have that ability to keep that vehicle. Because they're most likely financed, they might not be able to keep that vehicle without the salary, the commensurate salary that went along with that good-paying job.
What about the announcement of the 2,400 layoffs? That's another plant?
That's the plant. That's the Dodge truck plant right here.
All right.
And that plant already laid off over 1,000 people in the spring. So this is the second round of layoffs. So the plant is basically about a third of the employees are remaining. So about 2/3 of the total employees have been displaced and laid off.
Why?
And they eliminated some of the models, and then they said that there's also quality issues with the workforce at that particular plant. So they discontinued the Ram 1500 truck at that plant, the traditional Ram 1500, and they've eliminated 2 shifts, and now they're basically running on 1 shift where they used to have 3 shifts, and they used to run 24 hours a day.
And how do people feel about that?
Well, the demand for vehicles has decreased. These auto plants, since the pandemic, they've been building cars and stockpiling cars, and they're not selling cars. So they filled up storage lots, and a lot of their facilities have built vehicles that they haven't sold. And so it's getting to the point where it's at a pivot of, do we continue to build vehicles that we're not selling, or do we scale back and not continue to build vehicles that aren't being sold through the dealership networks that the American automakers use?
What's, in your opinion, the biggest mistake that Biden has done on his mandate, not to help workers, to be able to go with the inflation and everything?
Well, I think the administration and our state government has made several big mistakes. Everybody thought that the electrification of vehicles was going to be the next big thing in America. Come to find out, we don't have the infrastructure for the electrification of all vehicles. So that's issue number one. And then we've changed from domestic oil production that was under the Trump presidency, where we were using fracking, we were using pipelines from Canada and North America, and looking for oil resources in Alaska and on our soils, and now we've become more dependent on Middle Eastern oil again, because the current president, President Biden, didn't want to do the fracking, didn't want the main pipelines that the former president wanted to build. So we were heading for complete independence with oil and energy, and the strategy shift from the current administration was to take oil back from the Middle East and stop searching for ways to generate fuels and oils on American soil and in North America, both from Canada and the United States working together. All of the policies and the strategies of the current administration has caused runaway inflation. Runaway inflation has been a huge problem for the average consumer, because the average consumer has been able to buy less, acquire less, and the cost of living has gone up substantially with inflation that's in the 20 to 30% range, which is just unacceptable.
What about Inflation Reduction Act that was supposed to be the answer to everything, with billions of dollars in new industry like environmental kind of industry and everything?
The current administration has played a huge hoax on the American people. They've pumped billions of dollars into the economy. They've weakened the American dollar, so much so that the dollar doesn't have the strength and the value that it had even 4 years ago. Adding free handouts, wiping out people's student debt. I mean, these things are unconscionable. If I borrow money, I'm expected to pay it back. How can the government just wipe out people's debts within certain categories? And I think they did that for political purposes. They want the young people to vote for them, but it's an ill-thought plan to destroy our economy, and the effects of it have destroyed our economy. And that's why we have runaway inflation. We have runaway costs at the purchase of food products and other consumer goods. Things have just gone through the roof. Like I said, even the cost of new vehicles is beyond the reach of the average American.
All right, thank you. Thank you so much. That was very, very interesting. Thanks for
You're
your
welcome.
time.
God bless.
Can you
Yeah.
give me your name and your station?
Oh yeah, my name is Anne.
You have a card?
Sure.
Oh, that's
I
okay. Or write it
forgot.
down, Sue, so
Yeah,
she knows.
please. So my name is Anne, A-N-N-E. My last name is Verdaguer, Verdaguer. My station is Radio France International. And if you give me your card, I'll send you the link to.
Please do.
Yes, I will. And I'll be happy to come back when you have food distribution.
Yeah, on Tuesdays or
on
Fridays.
Tuesdays, yeah, that'd be.
And you
that'd
can
be
talk to the
great.
people. I mean,
I will.
there's a lot of people in great hardship,
Yeah.
and especially the last 4 years.
That's
People don't realize how devastating it is.
Exactly. Yeah. That's why I wanted to